On this episode of Maldo's Magic Podcast, the subject is High Magick. In the Scottish Rite, the guest will be Right Worshipful Michael LaRocco, Grand Steward Nassau District, and the director of the Livingston Masonic Library. Utterly fascinated with the fraternity, Michael is a 33 degree with the ASR NMJ, Royal Arch, Cryptic Council, and Knight Templar, founder of the Magus Guild of Valley of Rockville Center, past master of Lynbrook, Massapequa, Lodge No. 822, and recipient of the Wendell Walker Builder of Men Award. Michael's goal is to discover the essence of Masonry and its connection to mysticism, theurgy, and personal development, thereby inspiring the fraternity brothers to create the best version of themselves.
Okay, all right. Greetings. Welcome to Maldo's Magic Podcast. Today, I have the honor and pleasure of bringing on Right Worshipful Michael LaRocco, and we'll be talking about the topic for today would be High Magick in the Scottish Rite. Hey, Mike, how's it going?
It's going well. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on the show.
It's a nice ride out here, so I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah. So, if you want, you could tell the audience about yourself briefly, if you want, and then we could dive into the topic.
Yeah, I guess my whole life, as early as I can remember, I've always been a seeker of truth. My father used to listen to Moody Blues, was his favorite band, and so we used to talk about deep philosophy when I was young.
Oh, wow.
He was into Pink Floyd and a lot of early, progressive music. And so the idea of philosophy and mysticism and metaphysics was part of my language, since I was 8 years old.
Wow.
And so as a seeker, eventually I came to the point in my life where I got very deeply into pursuing spiritual matters and meditating and studying Eastern philosophy.
Oh, nice.
And then eventually I found Freemasonry as a completely different, format or way to explore that similar information.
Okay.
And so when I came into Freemasonry, I guess my first pass, going through the 3 degrees, I didn't see the mystical quality to it, really, to tell you the truth, until I joined the Holy Royal Arch and then finally the Scottish Rite.
Oh, really? Okay.
And it was in the Scottish Rite degree of the 14th degree that my head almost popped off my shoulder, because what I was looking for was there, it was being confirmed. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, I met brothers whose knowledge of esoteric wisdom was off the charts, and that really brought me into a larger network of people that had the knowledge that I wanted to explore and discuss also. So that's kind of how I got to be so involved with Freemasonry.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Is it safe to say that, I always think that it's very veiled in the first degrees, it's there, but you have to really dig deep to really find it. And then I think personally, because I also joined the Scottish Rite as well, that I think it's a little more explicit there, but it's still veiled. And is it really that maybe it's always been mouth to ear? And like you said, you met brothers that were well versed in some of the knowledge or information you were seeking, and maybe is that why that the true knowledge is always mouth to ear? Maybe
I don't know. My personal opinion is I really don't like the term mouth to ear.
Okay.
Because we're talking about a game of telephone, and it becomes extremely unreliable in my opinion.
Okay.
I think that there's a saying that they repeat in the southern jurisdiction, Scottish Rite, that Albert Pike would say, says the glory of God is to conceal the word. So I think what happens is maybe it's veiled, or I think that if me and you came up with a very, very highly symbolic and enlightened, influenced ritual, most people wouldn't understand it unless they had some of that stuff. So I think it's something that happens to me, and I think this is one of the qualities of Freemasonry, is that if you make it through, you may not think it's very esoteric or very deep until you start listening to lectures or podcasts like this and start reading books.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you're sitting in a first degree or a second or third degree, and all of a sudden you have this experience where it connects, and then it's like a light comes to in the front of your head. You have this aha moment, and you realize that true knowledge probably is not come in the form of words. It's It's a direct experience. And so
Okay.
I think maybe that's why we teach that way, is so that you can have that direct experience and not just be information or data. So
Yeah.
knowledge, like when people talk about Gnostic, I always say, what are
Okay.
you referring to? And,
Right,
I know I'm very anal
Yeah.
when it comes to the definition of this word,
No,
what
but
people
yeah.
are referring to. Are you talking about real knowledge, like pure experience of consciousness, direct connection, or are we talking about another piece of dogma that someone said that's supposed to enlighten us?
Okay.
And so that's why I have this conflict when people say Gnostic. The history of Gnosticism and what a lot of people call Gnosticism today, that's hip to say, is very two different things, you know?
Okay.
So, which I get tripped up on it, so.
Yeah.
And it annoys people when I want to really kind of define.
It's funny because that's one of the first things I dove into, like, was the gnosis. Like, when I got on my spiritual path, I started with flotation therapy about 10 years ago that helped me to unlock my subconscious mind and to subdue my ego and to realize that I know nothing and to start actually reading books and learning. And basically, I started down the Eastern path, similar. I was doing like kirtan and yoga and like devotional bhakti yoga. But then I was really interested in the gnosis because I had my Christian upbringing. And I'm like, what's this Gnostic stuff? Well, what is this? It's totally different, the Gnostic Bible. And I went down that rabbit hole. But maybe I didn't really, I just assumed that Gnosticism was just the scriptures that, or the books that weren't in the canonical Bible, or they weren't in like the Roman Catholic or King James Version Bible. That's what I assumed it to be, like these hidden texts of gnosis, of direct knowledge between God and his pupils or something.
Yeah, the term Gnostic didn't come till hundreds of years later.
Okay.
Until after they were wiped out, and it became like an umbrella term for the collection of a lot of different stuff. And traditionally speaking, when people refer to Gnosticism in the way you're doing, the correct term historically, whether it is the right or wrong word to describe it, but historically speaking, you're referring to mysticism.
Mysticism,
so
okay.
the tradition and history would call that mysticism, meaning a direct connection to the mystery. Gnosis would be secret information revealed to you that would give you a mystical experience. And so, is it knowledge and dogma, or secret wisdom, or is it practices that bring you into divine union itself? And so if you're talking about divine union, I hate to tell it to the Gnostics, but we're talking about mysticism, not Gnosticism. Gnosticism was more the cerebral version of it rather than the intuitive version of it, in which case modern Christianity has never been divorced from its mysticism.
No,
it's been downplayed. It's been downplayed.
No. I think it's a revival. I think it's coming back. I think
when it's needed, it comes back.
I think it's definitely coming back. And to touch back to back with the degrees and the Scottish Rite. I guess experientially, you have to experience it. You were saying. I think also that there's like when we go to school, grade school, we need to learn the alphabet first, right? Mm-hmm. We need upon layers, and there's 12 grades that connect to the 12 signs of the zodiac. But besides me going down that rabbit hole, what I'm trying to say is that I think people to truly understand like Albert Pike and the Scottish Rite and Masonry as a whole, they need to basically go to like Western philosophy or Western hidden knowledge and understand the alphabet of that, like alchemy, understand what these Kabbalah, the basics of it, to be able to see it in the ritual, to see maybe, oh, that's why there's this amount of number because it connects to the tree of life. Something like that. Or if they don't understand the alchemy or the planetary symbols or anything, what it stands for, then it's harder. Like, how can you expect someone that's 5 to do senior work in 12th grade? They need the foundation first. So I think that's the same way too. I think we assume that some brothers maybe have the knowledge and did the research prior, or are doing the research within the first, second, third degrees as they tell us to do, but they might be just doing surface research and not going deeper into what does it really mean? Well, if this stems from the ancient mystery schools, what were they teaching? And do we need to learn to really truly understand it? That's kind of what I
It's a really good point. I mean, it sounds more like the way the Southern jurisdiction portrays the experience rather than the Northern Masonic jurisdiction. What happened in the Northern Masonic jurisdiction is that, Pike took the original material, and it was a speech he gave to the Northern Masonic jurisdiction when he went there. Okay. And he told them, he said, look, like he was almost like apology. It was like, look, what I got in the degrees was absolute chaos. part and parcel of all this stuff.
Oh, wow.
And I had to put it together, try to make some sort of order out of chaos, which is one of the mottos.
Oh.
You know, the Frankie manuscript made it to New York first, in the North first. They were the first to form a Supreme Council.
Okay.
But Pike altered this stuff to try to move away from the Judeo-Christian tradition,
Really?
and make it an eclectic system to include Gnosticism, astrology,
Yeah.
Kabbalah, alchemy, sacred geometry, all right? So there was some Kabbalah and alchemy and sacred geometry built into the system to begin with, because these were the go-to terms for people to experience mysticism back in Europe at the time.
Yeah.
Before they really had good communication with Buddhism and Hindus in the Vedic tradition and yoga and their sciences that were profoundly practical in those cultures. But Europe didn't have access to them, at least as much as they did with Kabbalah and alchemy.
Yeah.
So he kind of like made an eclectic. He tried to make it into an eclectic system, where anyone could go to it. You know. But you would have to have a little bit of knowledge of alchemy, Kabbalah, sacred geometry, astrology to understand what they're talking about. Certain key things. The Northern Masonic jurisdiction felt that like there was too many years separated where people didn't know what the hell was going on. Because they weren't studying Kabbalah, they weren't studying alchemy.
I see what you're saying.
Because there was really no one to really teach that. Try to practice Kabbalah today. You know, how you really you're gonna read a lot of books. You're gonna read all the books, and you're still gonna say like, I don't even know what they're talking about still, because it's outside knowledge, right? And the inside knowledge comes in two forms, really. In the commercialized schools that are selling you that they know the answers to this stuff. Whether they do or they don't, I don't know. But they're definitely competing factions. And the other way is that, traditionally speaking, is that in order to really understand and practice Kabbalah, you have to get past, you need a guide. A guide on the other side, meaning the spiritual reality. How do you get the guide? You got to get past the gatekeeper. How do you get past the gatekeeper? I can't tell you. And that's how it goes. But if you really dig deeper, they will. The ones that are honest will tell you it comes from spiritual practice, purification, meditation, visualization, working with the tools, and then all of a sudden you feel a connection to someone on the other side that's leading you and guiding you.
That's why I wanted to use the topic High Magick, because I think there's a lot of items that within High Magick circles that are veiled or they were within the Scottish Rite. And I think if you join like a group or you're in a spiritual practice that basically it's like that's figured around High Magick, everything you mentioned's in there. Like we're doing the meditations, we're doing the visualizations, we're doing the ceremony, the rituals daily, because why? We want union with that being on the other side, right? Because Kabbalah is it's like to receive, so you need to connect that, I guess, that current. We want to kind of connect to that, like make the phone call. But it's not as easy as, let me call the Archangel Raphael. It's not like that. It's you have to, for what I've learned, you have to do enough things to get noticed by them for them to even want to, let me give an example.
And then to eventually get them on speed dial.
Like think about Moses. You have to, yes, he, he murdered someone, but besides that, he left the lavish life, Egyptian life, went to the desert. He had to literally climb a mountain. He had to literally get to the point where it's like he knows nothing and to kind of surrender to God, and then that's when he appeared in the burning bush. Meaning, I feel like nowadays we have to basically put everything aside and do consistent work enough for them to be like, all right, this person's serious. Okay, I'll answer his call now. As just a
good. It's a good point. It's a good point. We should probably state that that we don't speak for Freemasonry or Scottish Rite, and that there are many authoritative circles that would deny that magic has anything to do with this, and they wouldn't be wrong either, because it almost is like it's whatever the culture or the individual needs it to be. But I think you're right too, and I think if you look at the progression of the first 3 degrees, I think that there's a story behind this. In the first degree, it's more or less about purification, like the original stonemason entered apprentice system, where you just served the master, and the only thing you were doing was helping, and you were learning to be altruistic. You were being taken care of, which please remind me to talk about later on, and how that symbolizes in the ancient priest systems, not the Jewish priest system, but in the magical orders and stuff.
Oh,
But
okay.
in the beginning, you're just developing knowledge of the working stonemasonry art,
Yeah.
and you're also learning to be altruistic because you're being completely taken care of, and you realize how intimately connected we are to nature and to each other
Yeah.
to work together to build these things, right? And eventually, when you're giving the ability to work on your own and receive your own wages, they wanted to make sure that you were both wise enough of your surroundings in the universe,
Okay.
but also that you were spiritually altruistic and connected to your real being and your real place in the universe, your connection with God and
Okay.
everybody else. Because to empower someone with the secrets of the universe,
Yeah.
how to really manipulate nature, which is
Yeah.
what the word magic really probably comes from,
Yeah.
is dangerous to a person who is not that character well deformed. Okay?
Correct, yes.
The first go-to thing we practice, and people maybe don't see it as magic, but the laws of attraction are probably one of the biggest, if not the most popular topic. If you search it on Amazon
Yeah.
for books,
Yeah.
you're going to find laws of attraction and time management as hundreds of thousands and
Oh,
millions
yeah,
of books.
yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Seriously, it's the most valuable thing. Of course, with the explosion of the book and the movie The Secret,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But what's the first go-to thing people want to manifest when they start thinking, hey, I could use my mind and my
Yeah.
belief system and my thoughts to get what I want? The
Yeah.
first go-to is money and intimacy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So my question to you is, why do you think
Yeah.
there was no magic spells for money and for sex in ancient times for thousands of years? They didn't even think about it.
Wow. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because their job as a priest
Yes. I
or a
see.
magician was they were completely taken care of.
Yes.
They didn't have to worry about food or shelter. The tribe took care of them,
Okay.
especially in the shamanic traditions
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Okay.
And that profession, that job was, well, the tribe takes care of them, and now that focused on helping the tribe by trying to heal them medicinally by using that powers of that knowledge of nature and their spiritual connections
Okay.
to heal the people and protect the people. That's what that job was.
Yeah.
So they didn't need intimacy or women because they were usually celibate.
Okay.
They
Yeah.
had to be celibate
Yeah, right.
because that would mix with their power and their conflict of interest of serving the tribe, right, or the
Okay.
community, whatever you want to call it. And they didn't need money,
Yeah. They're right. They didn't.
so they didn't need money. So that developed much later, you know. And so if you look at the system of the way the first 3 degrees are laid out, it looks like it's a progression of making sure someone knows their psychology, knows their character defects, knows how to handle the situation,
Yeah, right.
and also knows their intimate connection with God and their surroundings, so that when they're empowered with the knowledge of the universe, the 7 liberal arts of sciences
Yeah.
were the 7 subjects taught in university for 1,000 years.
Yep.
And what was it about? It was learning about the universe
Yeah.
and your place and how to use it. And look at the subjects.
Correct. Oh yeah. Yeah. Learning rhetoric, right? Learning grammar. You know, learning logic, learning all the items that.
Where does it wind up? Astrology.
Astrology. Yeah. Wow. A lot. It
The
goes from
head of
yeah,
all the
to
sciences.
Yeah.
Because you need all the other sciences
Yep.
to get to astrology and understand what it's about.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Like we were talking about before, the layers to get to that point.
Yeah.
You know? So, so it's interesting. I think that people forget, like especially in this woke culture movement that we have, is they're focused on casting off indoctrination and traditional wisdom because they find a hypocrisy, and they do see the truth that there is profound hypocrisy in it,
Yeah.
which does need to be discarded.
Okay.
But what they're doing, unfortunately, is they're also destroying the mechanism that creates good character.
Oh. Okay.
So you should have that in place before you destroy the old one. So
Yeah.
now you have a bunch of people that have cast off the doctrine of traditional, formats and styles of society and traditions.
Yeah.
But they haven't replaced it with stuff. Now when their own problems come up, how do they deal with it? They don't know how to deal with it. So yeah. So I think that's what's happening too. And so hopefully there'll be a balance when they start realizing that there is some truth in it. Like it's almost like you have to come from a religion, come from a culture, come from a doctrine, come from a tradition, be well grained in it, and then develop good character, and then transcend it.
Yeah. Yes. That's what you're
But if you
saying.
descend it prior to that, you just won't know what you're doing. It's like picking up a guitar and thinking you're going to write beautiful songs without learning how to play.
Yeah. No. It's like.
But people sometimes they learn how to play so well, they don't know how to forget about music theory and actually get creative and produce a song that'll touch souls.
So it sounds like you're saying it's all about balance, and I think that's what where when it comes to High Magick, something that we do is called the middle pillar ritual. And what's the middle pillar for? Like the viewers understand that in life or in Kabbalah there is a tree, and on the tree there's 3 pillars. So there's a pillar of severity, there's a pillar of mercy, in the middle there's a pillar of beauty. And the pillar of severity is seen to be black, the pillar of mercy seen to be white. So it's a mixture. It can't be polar opposite, it needs to be a mixture, it needs to be gray. You need to be in the middle way. And that's why I enjoy that ritual, because it's all about the balance. Yeah. You can have the knowledge, but how do you be creative if you're too stuck in that one side?
Right.
So you got to walk the middle path, and I think that middle path is what we could see as the Christ consciousness. If in the Kabbalah understanding, meaning it's the balanced way of acting, knowing when to show mercy, knowing when to be severe.
And that's why I love Freemasonry too, is that because it seems to focus on the balance between these 2 worlds.
Yeah.
You'll have the monastic communities in not just in Christianity or Catholicism, but there's monastics not only in the Orthodox Christian path too, but you also have it in Buddhism and Hinduism.
Oh yeah.
This comes from thousands of years, and so you could get into higher teachings and higher energies and consciousness and enlightenment and cast off the world, right? So I think one way we could define High Magick would be to try to acquiesce the energies of the divine energies to bring back for a noble purpose.
Okay.
Maybe we could define, and I think there's less definitions for High Magick than there is as Low Magick. Maybe Low Magick can be defined as your main interest is in manifesting worldly things, physical, looking for money, looking for sex, looking for whatever you could try to control and manipulate for this world. High Magick I would see as your interest is more or less dealing with the purity of consciousness, divinity, heaven, God, and to use that to better the world and humanity.
Yeah.
And so if you look at the Catholic Mass, that's a high magical ritual.
Oh yeah.
That may upset some people,
yes,
but there's a correlation. And so in the Catholic Mass, you not really ask for anything personal other than protection for, you could include petitions that so-and-so get better from cancer. And you want to pray for your children, you want what's best and stuff like that. And you pray for the president, you pray for, for stuff. And so we're going into the divine, bringing back that energy to use for some noble purpose.
Yeah.
I think that the whole point of the narrative and of Freemasonry, we can say symbolically, and no one could, I guess, is allowed to put it into words, is to say that what we're really trying to do is enlighten each individual to build communities, countries, and this world a more enlightened society than what it is.
Yeah.
And the reason why I think that we're not allowed to put it into words, because I think that Freemasonry needs to be free of dogma and use symbols and ceremonies and allegories. So, this is the most brilliant part, so we could teach the truth without the dogmatic conflicts and theological controversies. Yeah. So anyone from anywhere they are can come and see what they need.
Yes. No, you're right. That's why I always tell when I teach my tarot classes here is that people, I always tell them, when you think of your subconscious, when I ask you what's a tree, every time they think of they see a tree in their mind. So it's to understand that your subconscious doesn't see in words, it sees in pictures. So that's why the tarot is used to unlock your subconscious, meaning when you talk to, like, with the symbols within Freemasonry, right? It's understanding that it has to be symbols for that reason, because that's the way your subconscious, which is the part of you that's closest to your higher self or your guardian angel, because that's the part of you that runs all the programs. When you're sleeping, when you're waking, no one tells your body to digest, your heart to pump. Your subconscious handles it for you. So I always tell people I like that, because that's just to get it a little deeper, is understand that that's why it has to be symbols, because we're trying to connect to, it's all about going within. So we're trying to connect to the inner parts of us. But it's hard for people to conceptualize that. But I think understanding as a conscious mind, subconscious mind, based off from, psychology even tells us that, right? That that's a good way to understand how that part of us communicates.
And if it's too out there for some people,
Yeah.
then I think everyone could identify with the fact that there are things we do that we don't know why we do them.
Yeah.
Whether it be maybe you want to stop smoking, maybe you want to eat better, maybe why you don't exercise enough, why you get involved with unhealthy relationships. Everyone has something. There's no such thing as perfect health in biology.
Oh, yeah,
in
of course,
environment.
yeah.
So everyone could say, and if you're honest, to say that there's something, some kind of pattern or habit that they're doing that they don't know why they do it, or they don't know why they don't want to adopt a habit that they want to achieve a result.
Yeah.
And so if you say, I don't know why I do that, or I don't know why I don't do that, the reason is unknown, the reason is unconscious. Unconscious and unknown are the same thing.
Yeah, you're right.
And so knowing about yourself, knowing what makes yourself tick, understanding your impulses, understanding, I had a friend of mine that told me, Mike, do you want to know the reason for everything? And my friend Mark Perrott, I go, Mark Perrott, you really going to tell me the cause of everything? Like there's really, he goes, yeah, the cause of everything is conditioning. Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
Everything, the cause of everything is conditioning.
Correct.
Chemical conditioning in the way our DNA is made up.
Okay.
Chemical conditioning in the way cells interact, in the way they reproduce or don't reproduce. Everything. And our personalities are formed by how we were conditioned.
Yeah.
We all start with a clear slate, right?
Yep.
Blank. And everything else is conditioning. And so if we're doing something that we don't want to do, it's because we were conditioned to do that. And what's the answer? Is to try to figure out how to recondition in the right direction.
It's funny you say it because it's like, it reminds me of a passage in like the New Testament. Jesus said, unless you're chosen, right, you can't enter the kingdom of heaven. So basically you have to have childlike faith. So he talks about that a lot. Like you have to be like a child. And a child is, you're at a pure state of before all those heavy conditioning. So it's like you have to kind of get back to that state of
unconditioned consciousness.
Unconditioned consciousness, and it's like it's just like so pure form. It's like what we think of like the superconscious as a fool going into the magician. Like as a magician, it's like when you become conscious, you're a young child figuring stuff out, but you're still heavy in imagination. You can still see things and just talk to create an imaginary friend. You know, there's no room to believe that anything's impossible in that age. As you start getting more conditioned, you get more to become a realist. You get more indoctrinated with science and with schooling. More earthly, more material way. It's just A, B, and C. All the other stuff is just daydreaming and stuff. But when that's still a part of us, that's still a part of the opposite side of the brain that doesn't think analytically.
But it's still there. It's still operating and it's pulling the strings probably behind the scenes.
Yeah.
M. Scott Peck in his book The Road Less Traveled talked about that. He said that it is absolutely true that you have to become like a child to go to the kingdom of God. But he said that this is a very dangerous axiom for people who have not formed a healthy ego first.
Oh, okay.
They will say to themselves, I don't have to go through the pain of evolving into an adult before I get to sainthood.
Oh, I
could bypass all that and go
yeah.
directly to sainthood. And the result is not sainthood, it's schizophrenia.
Really? Oh, wow.
You have to go through adulthood to get to sainthood. Because a child, though, may be closer to the truth before all the indoctrination and all the conditioning comes on, but he doesn't have the viability or the communication skills to communicate that into the world. And so it's like you have to develop the sense of feeling separate from the universe to then experience the unity of the universe in a mystical act, and then learn how to dissolve the bonds that make you forget you're one with God and everybody else, so that the muscle memory of becoming an adult and a separate individual will carry through. It's almost like this actually might be the hands of the sculpture that is creating undifferentiated consciousness into a solid, sovereign, spiritual entity. If we're one with everything, we're not separate.
It's true, yeah.
Right?
Right.
Separation is almost like the forming of a snowball or the spirit that coagulates into its own individual vortex of perpetuating existence after death.
Okay.
Like you need the grounding of being in the body, in the illusion of the physical to separate. Almost like what happens to a seed when it's in the ground and then it finally grows and then it branches off into individual and creates different flowers. And we do call this the garden. In some respects, you might even call the earth, which is synonymous with the word dirt, as the place we plant God seeds.
Yeah, and then
we put seeds in the dirt.
And as above, so below.
This is the earth.
Okay. And we are the earth too, as well. So.
And the seed is the spirit.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Wow. The seed is the spirit.
But if you die, and this is just speculation, I don't know.
Yeah.
If you die and you don't know you're a separate entity and one at the same time, and have worked that out, what will happen? I don't know. Will you incarnate again because you still think you're a body and you're attached to a body? And if you're just one with everything, and you don't know, you haven't cultivated your individuality. Like Carl Jung said, he wants the ego to be small, but hot.
It's like that's why I believe sometimes some Eastern cultural philosophies like kill the ego, kill desires. Where like the Western is a little opposite of that. It's about like transmuting your desires and have the desire for union, right? Or cultivate the ego, or with alchemy to refine it, right? So that's why I feel like I always agree that we can't really kill the ego, just subdue it to a point. Because is it a part of us?
I think that's a really good point. We have to first know what ego is.
Yeah.
At the very least, it's a word, ego, that comes from the exact Latin translation is I. So I think that you can't get rid of your ego because that's your I.
Yeah.
Who do you see yourself is what ego is.
Okay.
So it's an identification process. So if I see myself as a body, mind entity separate from God and everybody else, my ego is going to be something that acts and works in the world as its own separate individual.
I see what you're saying.
But if the ego transcends the body-mind concept and sees itself as God himself, well then you didn't lose your ego. Your ego just got turned inside out and becomes the whole.
Yes, I see what you're saying.
Which is the exact words Jesus refers to himself, the Father and I are one.
Yeah.
But to a Hindu or a Buddhist, they would say, that's what happens to an enlightened soul that realizes they're inseparable with God.
So they
don't have a separate identity.
Just, different cultures describing it differently. But it's still this somewhat same process.
Dude, it's hard enough to explain it or express it in one culture.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. No, yeah.
Now to cross-reference that,
Yeah, totally. Wow.
Sometimes we're better off using poetry.
Yeah, you're right.
In the Hindu tradition in India, Rama was the incarnation of God.
Okay.
A couple hundred years before Krishna. And this Rama was the 7th incarnation of the Avatar in that tradition.
Okay.
That was human. The 6 others were variational forms. One time it was a fish, right?
Wow.
So I don't know what the symbology really means behind all that. But Rama is this guy who's God, and he's the son of a Brahmin king. His father dies. He's got to make it out on the run. His wife gets kidnapped. Everywhere he turns, having tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. To help him with his challenges, there's this psycho-magical being, Hanuman, right? Monkey man,
Hanuman. Okay.
that wants to become his servant. And there's a point in the story where God, Rama, asks Hanuman, "Who are you?"
Really?
And Hanuman says, "When I forget who I am, I serve you. When I remember, I am you."
Wow.
And for me, on the subject of divine union and the mystery of individuality and plurality, I kind of like to leave it there.
Yeah, that's just like, wow.
Yeah.
That's deep.
So maybe Freemasonry, especially Scottish Rite, is more poetic. It's more about the art. It's more about expressing, rather than getting into trouble and creating a dogma. Because if it's a dogma, you could be persecuted. You could say that's wrong. That belief system is wrong.
Yeah. I see
And then you could be destroyed because of it.
Yeah.
So Freemasonry creates a system that says we don't have a dogma. So anyone that has anything against what you think we believe, it's wrong, because we don't have a belief.
Yeah.
We literally are the institution that gifted the world the ability and protected to this day for every human being's right to have their own belief.
Yeah.
And to choose their own leaders. There'd be no democracy or freedom of religion without Freemasonry. You could argue it, but you won't win that argument.
Yeah, wow.
All 6 great revolutions of the 17th and 18th century. American Revolution, French, Italy, Hungary, South America,
Yeah, Simon Bolivar was a Mason.
and in Italy,
Yeah.
they're all Freemasons because we're the brotherhood of all mankind.
Yeah, that's what, it's unity, right? It's harmony. Wow.
Yet we allow you to have your individuality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank God.
It's like having an individuality, like knowing you're an individual, but then knowing you have your brothers, you have your brotherhood. So it's like you learn to live your individual life, with mankind, right? Like what we learn, right? 7 virtues, but you also learn to deal with your brethren as well. So it's like learning to be part of the whole and learning to act as your individual. So it's like,
yeah, we have a term that's in English, not in Cipher, and it's said at the closing of a meeting if you choose the optional closing charge.
Yeah.
But it's also in the installation of offices, which is a public event.
Okay.
So I am not violating anything by saying this, is that this is repeated a few times in our ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
Be ye of one mind. Directly from the Masonic ritual.
Yeah.
Be ye of one mind. We could all be separate, but we're acting together.
Yes. To me, that's...
Like bees, like the queen bee.
Yes.
The consciousness is from the queen bee.
Mm-hmm.
They're all of one mind. Which might be what the word Elohim means. Because there were polytheists who argued that the word Elohim means the plurality of God.
Mm-hmm.
There's multiple beings. So they're saying, see, we're talking about multiple gods. There's not one God. But a Hebrew scholar had told me, he said that the word El, traditionally in Hebrew, is a single masculine.
Yes.
And the rest of the word Elohim is
It's
a feminine plural.
Yeah.
So it starts off, the first word for God. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. They didn't use the English language.
Yeah.
They used Hebrew, and the word they used for God was Elohim.
Yes.
Which might be the answer or the term for the multiplicity of divine beings that maybe we could call angels, and God himself are, you know what? There's a rabbi on YouTube, I forget his name. He said that the revelation to Moses, and when he creates the Shema, and he's giving the prayer of Israel, is saying that the literal translation of the Hebrew is saying that Elohim and Yahweh are one. So Elohim are the angels. So sort of like if you watch Star Trek, the Borg, maybe the angels are the Borg for God, with his essential intelligence that they're not separate from.
It's collective consciousness, right? In more modern terms, right?
Yeah.
And then it's also, if anyone has studied Swedenborg talks about, and people, the viewers don't know, Emanuel Swedenborg. He was a Sweden. I guess he was like an engineer. He wasn't someone that was like into this stuff, into mysticism or spirituality. Eventually, it's said that he joined some Masonic lodges, and he had at a later age this like epiphany. He had this basically experience in heaven, and when he wrote the famous book Heaven and Hell, and he talks about how in heaven there's collective consciousness of angels. Like if you think like how Michael Archangel thinks, you're in that family. It's not like multiple spirits, it's just everyone that's in that family, they're all within Michael, or everyone that's within Gabriel, they're all within that angel. And it's like you have basically heavenly families based off the collective consciousness of that angel in a sense.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's good stuff, deep stuff. I don't think we talk about it enough in Masonry, but there is the Swedenborg Rite. I think it's still something that a lot of Masons don't even know about. I've just been down this path, so I love to research everything.
The Swedenborg Rite or the Swedish Rite?
There's different. Swedenborg Rite is from Emanuel Swedenborg, and the Swedish Rite is different from like Sweden.
Yeah.
But Emanuel Swedenborg, and it's interesting because a lot of this stuff is coming into play in like modern like TV and stuff. There was a movie on Netflix too as well. That if you write just Emanuel Swedenborg Heaven and Hell movie on Netflix, it'll tell you the exact title. But basically in that movie, it's about like, because during that time it was all about the spiritualist movement, right? So in the late 1700s, 1800s, right?
Spiritualist as in contacting spirits.
Correct. Yeah, that was like a big thing, and that's what kind of opened up people to Egyptomania and going down these occult paths or learning, right? Because that connected to that, even though it was its own little thing. But basically, during that in the movie, they talk about that book. And that book helps this guy to realize something, that there's like spirits within the house, and they actually do a seance. And so it's interesting how like a lot of that stuff is coming back into our modern like movies now. I think it's become highly prevalent where people are trying to like awaken and really the rich Western culture of the spiritual realm that we have cultivated, and I think it gets overlooked sometimes.
Yeah, Joseph Campbell in the interviews in the famous interview that they have with him, they recorded it. I think it's still on Netflix. The Power of Myth series. There's a part of it when he's talking about his favorite philosopher, Schopenhauer, and he's talking about an event that happened, and it was recorded in the newspapers in Hawaii, where there's this peak that people climb up to and they go there, and a lot of them has beautiful views and there's very powerful wind that goes in your hair. But one of the reasons that people climb up there is to commit suicide, because if they're going to jump, they know for sure they're going to die. Right? So these two police officers are driving this like 4-wheel drive past the peak, and they see someone on top. He's going to jump. So one of the police officers, without just on a reaction, just jumped out of the 4-wheel drive and ran up there to try to save him. When he grabbed him, they were both going over. The other police officer got to the other side at that point and was able to save them both. And so the interviewer was interviewing the police officer, and he was saying, like, I don't understand, like, you have a family. Yeah. And you have an obligation to the police force. Like, what made you, like, almost sacrifice your life for this man, And the police officer said that, I can't really explain it. It wasn't really a decision. I just knew that if this man died, I'd not be able to live another day. And so Campbell talks about how he believes in the description of Schopenhauer that he had a metaphysical breakthrough that realized that the world of sensations and play of elements, if you will, disguised the reality of duality. Yeah. And that he realized without it, just spontaneously, his connection and infinite inseparability with this other being. Wow. And that they were not separate, And so I usually don't like channeled information, like people that say that they channeled something. Yeah. But I have to say, like, what you were talking about reminds me of the law of the one. Oh, Ra. Yeah. Where supposedly they're interviewing this entity called Ra. Yep. Which is a collection of minds from another galaxy, right? Okay. Or a different part of the galaxy, I forget. Yeah. But I like the term that they use, social memory network, where each evolved soul is its own individual like book. Okay. Yeah. And this is just the collective library. Yeah. So they're one yet separate, and it seems very descriptive of what in Christian mysticism they talk about as the body of Christ. Yeah. Okay. We're individual, and if people think that's out there and it's too hard to believe, I would say to them is that, look, coming from an absolutely pure medical biological fact, the real entities that biologists know are the cells, the individual cells. Yeah. Individual cells are the real entities. The human being is made up of 50 to 100 trillion cells. Wow. Literally, this is the truth. Millions of cells are being completely reproduced in the body every second. Yeah, wow. To the point where in the course of a year, 98% of the atomic material in your body is replenished with new material. You have a different body every year. Yet you have what you perceive to be one consciousness. But you don't interact with individual cells. You don't check in to see how the skin cell is in the beginning. You're not even conscious of the individual cells because they're so far away from you. So in reality, the human being is a social memory network of the intelligences of 50 to 100 trillion cells, whose lifespan is not very long. No. Some cases, a millionth of a second. So it's not so out there to believe that God is the ultimate consciousness of the multiplicity of beings, which maybe is what entered into the formation of this universe, in which case the first line of Genesis seems to be appropriate. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The Elohim created the heavens and the earth. I mean, when he's talking in Genesis, he's talking to someone. Yeah. When Adam and Eve, he finds out that they committed the sin of eating of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Yeah. He's talking to someone and he's saying, now they're like us. Yes. Who's he talking to? Yeah, that's... Catholics say it's Jesus and the Holy Spirit. The Jews say he's talking to the other angels. You know, some people will say, you know, it's the Anunnaki,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Talking to each other. To me, it's the moment that the ego evolved in the human species, when all of a sudden they felt their separation. They felt as individuals, and that the construct, the mental construct of identification, of being aware of oneself and assuming I am the body-mind entity,
Okay.
was a much more evolved, sophisticated security system to preserve the race. It was much more advanced than just instinct.
Yeah.
Now you're bringing memory and association together. In the Toltec believe that the brain produces dreaming, and dreaming is consciousness.
Yeah.
So that you can now relate or correspond memory to association and have thoughts and contemplation to try to know what's safe to eat and what's not safe to eat. That plant is poisonous. I know because I remember my cousin ate it and died.
Yeah.
And that animal is food, and that animal's definitely not food. That saber-tooth tiger, let's just run.
Yeah, yeah.
You know? And so there had to be a point in the evolution of mankind when we were more one with nature and emerged out of this, but only cerebrally, only mentally do we assume. Because the text says they ate the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden they're cast out from the garden. Because now being aware of oneself, the byproduct is feeling separate from everyone and everything.
They said now they'll be like unto us, right? Isn't there some scripture said now?
Well, now he says, now they are like us.
Yeah.
They need only stretch out his hand and eat from the tree of life, and they will have everlasting life. So God's freaking out. The ancient rabbis said that commentary was God realized that he created immortal beings that could not control their evil inclinations.
Oh, wow.
And so he created the physical universe where it's old age, death, and suffering as part of the experience, just to work out the character of that God he created. That's the story.
Yeah.
That's the story. And then finally you go through the whole Bible and you come back to the birth of Christ. And this is the birth of a realization that, so what did they mean in the old times, right? The Aristotelian philosophy is what influenced the theology of the church. They used Aristotelian theology as a platform to develop the theology of the church. And so they used to speak more in terms of myths. Now, if you say that's just a myth, you're discounting it. You're saying it's not true. But myth throughout the centuries has meant something different.
Yeah.
It's the symbols that transmit psychological truths that we don't have words for.
Yeah.
I mean, the subconscious mind is less than knowledge of the subconscious mind is about 90 years old, right? Maybe coming up 100 years old with Freud.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So prior to that, I didn't know how to explain it. So I had to use myth. That's what Jesus taught in parables.
Correct.
And what was what did they think the meaning of the myth of Genesis was? Okay, and the virgin birth? Well, they saw the birth of the ego, separation of the anima and the animi, separation of male and female in the individual.
Oh, okay.
My intuition got disconnected from my intellect. So now I feel disconnected. I feel disconnected from the world and everything else. And so they needed religion and philosophy to reconnect
religious reunion
to the divine. And so when you catch up to the whole thing, right, is what would happen in the wintertime. What would happen in the wintertime, things were colder, people would spend more time indoors. You have a lot more chance to recollect about what's going on. You're supposed to go inward. You're supposed to start processing your emotional blocks and the emotional wounds of childhood. And if you could do that, there's only a finite amount of unconscious material blocking you from your source energy.
Wow.
And if you could do that, which is rare, and you process that, well then you get to your original consciousness, which is the original consciousness your heart first started to experience when you were born, pure consciousness. Because by the way, the heart tells the brain 50 times more information than the other way around. And there's actual neurons on the heart.
The heart gets created, I think,
first.
In the womb first,
So, let's think of the story now.
Yeah.
Purity means purity of consciousness.
Yeah, not purity like
not
external
like,
purity.
Not like, having specific types of sex or anything like that, but it's talking about getting in touch with one's own unindoctrinated, unconditioned consciousness in one's heart.
And that's why
what happens when that happens? You too become the virgin and give birth to the Christ within.
Wow.
This is the story. This is the greatest story. ever told. Not the made-up fabrications that Christianity is a copy of all the others, but there's an underlying archetypical through them all.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
And the fact that there are similarities doesn't discount it, it justifies it.
Yeah.
That this is the calling of human beings. That's the story I heard, and that made me believe again. And so to me, the Bible is pure, it's pure magical, esoteric roadmap to self-realization.
Yeah. You just gotta,
I could care less whether those historical events were true in the exact same way they were described. Because it's in the power of the myth that elevates us, that enlightens us, that awakens us, that motivates us to live together in harmony.
And myth could just be seen, as you said before, subconscious is just really coined in about 90 years. Myth could be seen, for the viewers to know as that subconscious part of us, that part, once again, that sees in pictures. Because what's a myth? What do we tell a story? What's a story you're telling? Your story you're telling with words, you're talking about pictures, about stuff that people experience. So even I think Joseph Campbell said that a lot of myths are based on an actual real event that happened. So it all goes back to
yes, definitely.
And it's I think it's incredible because then now you see in Christian symbolism, the Sacred Heart, it's alluding to, it's telling you something, but I feel like
that's why iconography is not a violation of the first commandment. It's not idolatry.
It's not,
because it's not thinking that that's God.
Correct.
And worshiping that.
No,
it's using symbols
to connect to God. Yeah.
Right. Right.
But that's why even it says in the scriptures, for those that have eyes to see and ears to hear. So it's, if you take it in a literal sense, if you don't really dive into this, it's sometimes harder. If you do it in a dogmatic way, you have to do it open-minded, and you have to do it in a way where you could receive the revelation, where you could receive that gnosis.
Did you watch Mandalorian?
Oh yeah, Star Wars got me hooked as a young kid. Star Wars has got me the Force as well as
George Lucas spent a year with studying with Joseph Campbell in his home to make sure the script of the first three movies fit and it was in line with the hero's journey as defined by and was in correspondence with all the ancient legends of the hero, right? So, but in the Mandalorian, the last episode, Mandalorian fights Moff Gideon, and he gets the dark saber.
Yeah,
you remember that?
Yes.
And he comes back in with Moff Gideon in handcuffs. And he's got the dark saber, and I forgot her name. Played with a very attractive actress, and her desire is to get the dark saber, so that she could lead the Mandalorians back to Mandalore and reunify them.
Yeah, this is the way.
She had she had a noble purpose. Yeah, and she sees him walking in with the dark saber, and her face drops, right? And he goes, here, and she can't take it. So Moff Gideon says, "You don't understand. It has to be won in battle."
Yeah.
And so he mocks it and goes, "Oh, okay, I yield. Here you go." And Moff Gideon says, "You don't understand. The sword doesn't have power.
Yeah.
The story does."
Oh.
Now all the stories in the Bible make sense from a completely different perspective.
Yeah.
Stop looking at their authenticity of historical revelation. Yeah. What are they teaching us? What are they showing us? What are they transforming us into is what's important. Yeah. That's how they've been trying to inspire and motivate us emotionally, right?
Yeah. So we're into about close to an hour now. So we could keep going or conclude this here with some final remarks on the main topic, or we could we'll go into it in the next episode. But we could, if you want, use this mark to conclude this part of the episode. Reconvene, stretch a little bit, and then we'll get back into it. So
it's up to you. I think we could conclude also.
Yeah.
So I think we'll just be rehashing stuff,
Yeah. So
I only have one remark I'd like to add to this.
Yeah. Okay. So floor's yours.
Okay. So what comes to mind, and it seems completely out of left field.
Okay.
I think it's appropriate.
Yeah.
Is from the Four Quartets, a poem written by T.S. Eliot, and he says, "And we shall not cease from our explorations. For the end of all our explorings, we will find ourselves at where we started and know the place for the first time." Thanks for having me today.
No problem. Thanks for being on the show.